We have now been in Zambia for 16 years. Our mission is to train self-supporting spiritual leaders who are equipped for holistic rural ministry. This means that we are fundamentally a training ministry. Instead of engaging directly in mission works ourselves, which would of course limit our impact to just a small area, we are instead seeking to multiply ourselves by training others to go out throughout the country. There are three main components to our ministry. The Bible College is, however, our primary ministry, and that is what I want to focus on in this video. First, let me just quickly show you some of the physical structures of our Bible College. We have 3 classrooms, and we have a large auditorium that can seat about 500 people. This gives us enough room to combine all the students for special events, graduation ceremonies, church on Sundays. In fact, we're going to be starting to conduct a nationwide lectureship starting next year when we invite people from all over the country. And we also have an office building that includes a 3rd classroom. We have built 30 married student apartments. These are just simple 3-room houses. They do not include indoor bathrooms or kitchens. That's all outside. And the reason is because we don't want to increase the standard of living of our students. In fact, these houses are actually an improvement on what most of our students came from back in their villages. We also have a dorm for our single students. We just built that this past year. Most of our students are married. So when you put all this together, it gives us a total housing 55 students plus their wives, or about 85 students in total. We've had about 600 to graduate from our Bible College over these 16 years. Since moving to our new campus and overhauling our training program, we have now had 3 classes of students to graduate. For reasons that I'll explain in a minute, the spiritual depth of these students has been a major improvement. In fact, the class that just graduated this past November is the best group that we've ever had to graduate from our school. They are the most spiritual-minded group that we have ever produced. So as I said earlier, our mission is to train self-supporting spiritual leaders who are equipped for holistic rural ministry. But even more to the point, our primary focus is to develop spiritual leaders. That's really the bottom line. If we don't do anything else right, we want to make sure that we succeed in this effort to develop spiritual-minded leaders who exemplify Christian character. This means that our Bible College is focused on spiritual formation. We want to see life transformation. So you say, why has this become our primary focus? Well, to answer that, I think we have to understand something of the spiritual environment of Zambia. On the positive side, receptivity to Christianity is very high in Zambia. Zambia is one of the most receptive places in the world, as most of Africa is. In fact, 85% of Zambians now claim to be Christians. You may not realize it, but there are more people who attend church on Sundays in Africa than in all of Europe and North America combined. In fact, twice as many people go to church on Sunday than in the Western world. That means that the heart of Christianity has now shifted from the Western world to the so-called global South, and Africa more than anywhere else in the world. This is why I'm very concerned that we make sure that we mature the faith in Africa. We need to make sure that the seed is firmly planted in Africa, in places like Africa, because one day they're going to be the missionaries to come to the rest of the world. There are now more members of the Church of Christ in Africa than there is in the United States. This is the result of all the mission work that we've done over the past 70 years. And I'm not sure a lot of people realize that, but our mission work has been very successful. However, we We also need to realize that Christianity in Africa is still extremely immature and superficial. It is profession without transformation. While large numbers of people have been converted to Christianity in Africa, it has not yet really begun to take root or to change the way people live. The old ways are still deeply embedded in the African spirituality. So you ask, why is it that Christianity has not yet transformed the life of Africans? Well, for one thing, Christianity has really only been in Africa since World War II. That's when we really began to send large-scale numbers of missionaries to Africa. We also need to understand that the people of Africa did not grow up with a Christian worldview. In their world, life is about manipulating spiritual power. When bad things happen, one typically goes to the witch doctor, who seeks to manipulate spiritual powers to bring healing or to make things right again. Thus, when one becomes a Christian, that worldview doesn't necessarily go away that quick, and people tend to approach Christianity in the same way. And so they end up thinking that if they go to church and put money in the collection plate, that they're going to get on God's good side, and then He's going to help them with whatever that they need. And it's basically about trying to manipulate God, just like people try to manipulate the spirit powers. Or you could say it's like someone with a village chief. If you can win his favor, then the chief will grant you special favors. And so the idea is that if you do something for God, then you get on his good side, then He's going to bless you. It is for this reason that I frequently hear people coming out of church on Sunday and they say, God is going to bless me. And I say, why do you say that? And they say, well, I went to church today and I put money in the collection plate. God is going to bless me. And I say, yeah, but what about the fact that you're taking bribes, or you're cheating people in business, or you're getting drunk all the time, or you have women on the side? And they always respond, well, yeah, but God's going to bless me. I went to church and I put money in the collection plate. Another reason why Christianity has not matured more than it should have is because we missionaries really have not done a very good job in developing spiritual leaders. I've talked to a lot of denominational missionaries and heads of denominations in Africa, and they pretty much agree with what I have observed, and that is that we haven't produced very good leaders in Africa. Our leaders are poorly trained, they're corrupt, they're immoral, they're embezzling from the church treasury, and they're preaching the gospel of prosperity. In other words, they're preaching about money. If you'll give to God, then God's going to bless you. While many missionaries have set up Bible colleges to train leaders, I think we have made the mistake of exporting our Western concept of education to Africa, and it doesn't work in Africa. We end up focusing only on academics and conveying knowledge or Bible knowledge, but we have failed to focus on character and the development of our students' spiritual life. We seem to have just assumed that they are already spiritual minded and they already understand Christianity well enough that all we need to do is give them a bunch of Bible knowledge. But we have forgotten that Africans did not grow up with a Christian worldview. And so as I began to realize this over the past few years, I came to the conclusion that we need to shift from church planting to making disciples. I came to realize that you can plant a lot of churches. It doesn't mean that you have made disciples. And secondly, I have come to realize that we need to focus clearly on developing spiritual leaders. If we train spiritual leaders, then they can go out and make disciples. And if they make disciples, then we'll be planting churches. And so I think that's exactly what Jesus intended to say in Matthew 28 in the Great Commission when He said, "Go make disciples of all nations." So it is for this reason that we have shifted our focus to spiritual formation. And so the next question is, well, how do you go about doing this? How do you develop spiritual leaders? So we did basically three things. First, we did a total overhaul of our ministry. 16 years ago, we started with a 2-year program, and we built dormitories. And the problem with that is that it meant that we ended up only getting young unmarried students, since we didn't have housing for wives. And so we got a lot of young unmarried students. Well, in 2015, when we moved to our new campus, we decided to focus on building married student apartments or married student houses. And we also extended our program from 2 years to 3 years. We also made some changes in the type of students that we are recruiting. We now want 75% of our students to be married, and their wives have to attend. If their wife doesn't attend, then the student can't come. If his wife doesn't stay, he can't stay. We want to train the wives in our women program. We also want to recruit older, more mature students. We want them already to be engaged in doing ministry. Not that they're going to or they want to do ministry, but we want to get guys that already have a passion for ministry, and they're already doing it regardless of whether they're getting paid or not. We also want students to be recommended by their churches. So as a result of this, we're now getting a better quality of student and we are training them for longer periods of time. The second thing that I wanted to do was to develop a good Bible faculty. I wanted to get men who are mature in the faith, they're spiritual minded, have good character, and have some idea of how to develop students' spiritual life. And this is taking quite a bit of work and a lot of training, but I now believe we have the best teaching staff that we have ever had. 3 of our teachers are young, but they have degrees in Bible. And I have paired them up with 3 other men who are older, but have extensive experience in ministry and evangelism. We have 2 female teachers who are teaching in our women's program. We have an agriculture teacher, and we now have a director for the Bible College who is doing a great job, and he and I work together almost on a daily basis in order to run this Bible program. Then the third thing that we had to do was to figure out how to develop a training program that is effective in developing the spiritual life of our students. Our goal, as I've already said, is all about spiritual formation. And so the question then is, how do you design a program that is going to effectively do that? Well, after much research and a great deal of trial and error, I think we have designed a program, and we have come up with what are, we believe, 7 essential components to spiritual formation. I don't have time to go through these 7 components, as it would take quite a bit of time to do so, but we have designed our Bible College so that it incorporates all of these various dimensions of spiritual formation. It seems to me that when I look at the way we have designed Bible colleges, especially in Europe and in America, that we tend to focus only on one of these components: academics, teaching Bible and ministry in a classroom. Not much outside a classroom, pretty much in a classroom. It is just kind of assumed that if you pass all the courses and you get a degree in Bible, that somehow is going to prepare you for ministry. But I have come to believe that there is far more that is needed if you want to develop the spiritual life of the students and develop spiritual leaders for the church. In addition to developing spiritual leaders, we want to train these men to be self-supporting. One of the big problems for churches in the developing world is that they can't afford full-time preachers. This is why many preachers end up embezzling money from the churches and preach about giving all the time, preaching the gospel of prosperity. You know, if you give to the Lord, then the Lord's going to bless you. That has become the dominant focus of most preaching in Africa today. As the head of one African denomination recently told me, he said, "Our preachers have become a burden to our churches." We have assumed that if we just set up Bible college and train these men, that they're going to be able to go out and be full-time preachers. But that, I think, is a big assumption. It seems that we have designed our training to produce guys that can only do full-time ministry. So we either assume that they're going to be able, that the churches are going to be able to support them, or we end up putting them on American support, which I think is a really bad idea, and it forever makes the churches dependent on American money. So this is why we train our students in basic agriculture, and we teach them how to use drip irrigation. The reason we teach drip irrigation is because it only rains about 5 months of the year in Zambia. But you can grow vegetables year-round because the temperature doesn't vary very much. But the problem in Africa is getting water. There's very little running water in the rural areas. And most people end up having to walk 3 or 4 or 5 miles in order to get their water. And so we teach drip irrigation because it is the most economical use of water. If you can get enough water to fill 4 buckets every day, you can grow enough vegetables to feed your family. We also teach our students how to raise chickens as a business so that they can earn a little income. Another facet of our mission statement is that we want to equip our students for holistic ministry. Thus, we're not only trying to train our students to feed themselves, but we want our students to be able to go back to their villages and teach others how to feed their families using drip irrigation. It seems that about every 4 or 5 years in Zambia, there is a drought. And when that happens, it leads to famine and a lot of malnutrition. This is one of the reasons why Zambia is the most malnourished country in all of Africa. So teaching people how to use drip irrigation and do some basic things to grow their vegetables will do a lot to helping to solve the problems caused by drought in Zambia. So we want to equip our students in agriculture so that they can do something to help the physical lives of the people in the village. That's part of holistic ministry, being able to help people in their physical lives. Second, we also train our students and their wives to be teachers in community schools. Most of our students are probably going to go back to villages, and they're going to be the most educated person in their village. And so I think it is natural that they should learn something about how to teach the children in the village, because without good education, Zambia is never going to develop. And so these students and their wives, they learn how to be teachers. They get practical experience teaching in our own primary school. And so when they go back to the village, they can, some of them can teach in the community school, and if there isn't one, then maybe they can start a community school in their church building and maybe earn a little income to help support themselves in ministry from that. So we give our students and their wives practical training in our primary school, learning how to be teachers. We also teach our students and their wives how to work with orphans and vulnerable children. There are so many children in the villages who have lost their parents or are living with grandmothers, and they're either orphans or vulnerable children. So we give our students and their wives practical experience working in Karen's Kids Children's Ministry. Fourth, we also teach our students basic medicine and the use of herbs and natural remedies so that when they go back to the village, they can help minister to people who are sick. In Zambia, there just really isn't medical services available. And even if there is a doctor and you go to the doctor, he doesn't have any medicine, and people can't afford to buy medicine. So it's kind of useless even going to the doctor. But there are things that can be done, some basic medicine that can help people who are sick in the village. And we try to teach some of these basic medical skills. Another thing that we do is teach our students about marriage and the family. Like most of Africa, Zambians are moving away from arranged marriages that were quite stable, and they're turning to love marriages, which have become very unstable. The reason is because people haven't learned relational skills that they need to build good marriages. Men still beat their wives and treat them like property, and I can assure you wives are just as bad in their behavior. So we're doing a lot to teach about relational skills to our students, both to improve their own marriages, but so that they can go back to the village and teach these skills, or these relational skills, at least to the next generation, so they can have better relationships. So this is why we're equipping our students for holistic ministry, so that they can minister both to the physical and the spiritual needs of people. One can't ignore the physical suffering of people in Africa. And it's essential that our students learn how to minister to both the physical and the spiritual. In fact, in Africa, religion that ignores the physical needs of people is considered pretty useless in Africa. This is one of the reasons why the gospel of prosperity has been so successful in Africa, because it offers people the expectation that God will somehow bless them here and now. I also think this is very biblical. When Matthew introduces us to the ministry of Jesus, he tells us that Jesus went about both preaching and healing. He didn't ignore the physical needs of people, and I don't think we can ignore the physical needs of people in Africa, and that's why we think it is important to teach our students and to equip them for holistic ministry. I hope this video has helped explain our mission and why we are doing what we are doing in Zambia. And so I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to this video.